Hi, my name is Gautham from Audio Academy, and today I'm going to talk about compression. So what is compression? Compression is nothing but dynamic shaping. So if you look at any sound, it's going to have a certain amplitude envelope, and you're going to have an attack, decay, a sustain, and a release. So I've put together a track that's got a kick, snare, hi-hat, and some rhythm elements with a bass. So let's listen to that. As you can hear, there's a kick, there's a snare, there's a hi-hat. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate compression on these individual instruments, as well as the entire drum bus. Okay, and we're going to use different settings for these things. So I'm going to load up the kick. As you can see, we have the compressor already there with very default settings. So I'm going to start by lowering the threshold. I'm going to bring it down to a point where we're catching all of these peaks, right? And now I'm going to dial in a ratio. Let's start with a ratio of 3:1. It's a good starting point. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is now I'm going to try to increase or improve the consistency of each of these individual kick hits. So I'm going to dial in an attack time that's relatively fast and a release time that is also a little short. And I'm going to dial it in. And make up for some of the lost gain. So let's bypass the compressor. Just make sure the gains match. Okay, as you can notice, the kicks are now a lot more even. Previously we had a few kicks that were a lot louder and some of them a little bit softer. They were getting lost in the mix. Now we've got them all almost to the same level, right? So this is one way which we use a compressor. And this approach allows us to increase consistency. The other way we can use the compressor is to change the shape of the sound. And we can change the shape in two ways. We can either make the track a bit more punchier, or we can make it a bit more smoother. So we can achieve this, either of these, by playing with the attack and the release settings. So I'm going to drop the threshold further down so that we get more of the waveform. And let's start by trying to make things a little punchier. So I'm going to keep the attack a little further back and tighten the releases a bit more. And turn up the gain just a bit. Yeah, so if you listen to the sound before and after compression, you got a much tighter and much more precise sound. Yeah. So the other thing that we can do is try to make it smoother. So what's happening is that when you've got the threshold set quite low and you've got the attack set somewhere here and the release somewhere here, the entire waveform kind of becomes a lot more sharper, and that's going to make things sound a lot more punchier. And we can do the opposite to get it to sound smoother. So what we'll do is dial back the attack and let more of that transient come through. And to stop the pumping, we're going to turn up the release. Right? If you look at the display, the entire compression itself looks a lot smoother. Yeah, that sounds about right. So now if I bypass the compressor, I'd probably raise the threshold a little bit. The sound is still quite consistent because of compression. It's a lot clearer, but also a lot more extended. You can hear the kick last a lot longer than it did before. So this is how we make things sound a lot smoother. What's happening here is an extension of the decay period of the sound. Right? We can do the same thing on the snare. Now let me pull up the snare. I'm going to drop the threshold. Let's keep a ratio about 4:1. Right, let's catch some of those peaks. Yeah, already you can see it working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the attack back a little bit more and extend the release. So that's a smoother sounding snare. Really fills up the backbeat. What we can do is make it tighter if we want. So let's just reduce the release time. Yeah, it now sounds more like a smack because of the tightness of the compression. So what we can also do is now compress the entire drum bus. As you can see, the snare seems a little bit louder than the kick, and the hi-hats seem to be way down in the mix. So instead of individually compressing every element, I'm just going to compress the entire bus. So when I'm doing this, I'm going to be a lot more subtle in my approach. So let's start by dialing the threshold. Yeah, we can already hear the compression happening. So let's start with a very gentle ratio, fast attack, and a release time. So I think I'll raise the threshold a little bit. That's a good threshold. So setting a very small ratio and a very quick attack time and a gentle gradual release. Just compensate by checking. I need to compensate a little bit more. Right, so this kind of smoothens out the level differences between the kick and the snares and even the hi-hats. So I'm getting a more even sound across the entire drum bus. And if that's what I'm going for, then this sounds great. But I could also do the opposite and get it to sound even punchier. What I would do is really lower the threshold, maybe increase the ratio a bit more, pull my attack a little back to let the transient cut through. Yeah, and pull the release, dial the release back. And yeah, now the sound is more even, but it's also a lot punchier than what we had before. Right, so just by playing with the attack release settings makes a huge difference to the sound. So that's it for today's tutorial on how to use the compressor.